This is Hooper and Sanford, a podcast from the Grady College of Journalism and Mass Communication at the University of Georgia. We explore where storytellers are made. I'm your host, Dayne Young, an alumnus of the college from 2011 and also a member on staff. I'm a public relations specialist, and in this role for the podcast today, I should tell you that I'm also taking master's classes and pursuing my MA degree, along with our guest for this week, Kendall Williams. Her story, when I heard it, I knew I had to get her on the podcast. So she graduated from Grady College with her undergraduate degree and then competed in 2 Olympic Games. She's a heptathlete. And so we are excited to chat with her about her experiences in Rio and then also in Tokyo. And she is preparing for one more Olympics. The other piece of this is that in my master's classes, she's in there. She's back at Grady College pursuing her MA degree as well in between Olympics. It's quite a story. Here's Kendall Williams. This is the Hooper and Sanford podcast. I am Dayne Young, and my guest today is Kendall Williams, a graduate of Grady College from 2017 in public relations, and now back at Grady. So, Kendall, a lot of us saw you in the Olympics in Tokyo, and now we're seeing you back on campus at Grady College. So, 1, thank you for joining us, and 2, if you'll just kind of lead into what brought you back to campus and to pursue your master's degree.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's just always been a goal of mine to get my master's degree from UGA. I got my undergrad here, and I love being in Athens. I still trained here, since being an undergrad all the way to now. And so it was just time to go back. I mean, after I finished my undergrad degree, I did go and train at the Olympic Training Center in California for a little under a year. But then I came right back to Athens and trained here, I think, for the 2019 season, and then realized that, it's time to just go back and then knock this master's degree out. So now that the Olympics has passed, I figured it was the best time to just jump back into school and get it done before the next Olympics.
Well, and so that was my next question is, what are your goals in terms of what you're going to do with this degree once you finish with your master's degree, but then also your goals for upcoming Olympics?
I think immediately after I retire from athletics, I would love to work in an ad agency. I think I just think like agency life would be so much fun. Either agency life or just work in the marketing department for like a major company. I think that would just be so fun. And yeah, so the immediate goal is there's a 2022 World Championships in Oregon this year, or next summer, I guess, August of 2022. And that'll be the first time a World Championships is held in the U.S. So really excited about that. I'm actually already qualified for that based on how I did this past season. So that is beneficial because it's less stress. I have the school thing going and I don't have to necessarily stress as much about the track part, which is nice. And then after that, sights are set on the 2023 World Championships, and then Paris is the next Olympics in 2024.
And for people that have just heard that you're in track and field, why don't you specifically tell us which event you're involved in? Because I know it can be a lot of things for a lot of different athletes.
Yeah, so my event is arguably one of the most confusing in the sport. I do the heptathlon. So I tell people, if you've heard of Jackie Joyner-Kersee, that's the event that she did. If you've heard of Bruce Jenner, he did the Decathlon. That's the men's version of what I do. So 7 events over 2 days, running, jumping, throwing. It starts with the 100-meter hurdles and then goes into the high jump, shot put 200. That's the end of day 1. And then day 2 is long jump, javelin 800. And it's all based on a point system. So how well you do equals a certain amount of points. Whoever has the most points at the end of the 7 events wins.
Take me back to some childhood stuff. When did you first realize, you're from an athletic family, I've read about that, but when did you first realize, oh, okay, this could be something that's really special for me?
Let's see. I played a lot of sports. Well, I guess not a ton, but I played sports growing up. I started track when I was 7. And I think before that I just did ballet and cheerleading. So I always had track kind of going in the background, but I also tried basketball, like I said, cheerleading, gymnastics, swimming, and I was horrible at literally everything. And honestly, I was not even that great at track at the beginning. But my dad, I guess, had a vision. My dad was my coach all the way from age 7 all the way up until I went to college. And so we just stayed in the sport. And I think the moment I realized that I could maybe do this at the next level, I think I was maybe between the ages of like 12 and 15. I was chosen to be part of this team to go over in Puerto Rico and like represent Team USA. So it wasn't like an official USA junior team, but we got to represent Team USA. And that was the first time that I got to like go overseas and compete. And I was, part of a team that wasn't the Heat track club. And so it was cool to kind of have like a mix up of the nation's best athletes. And so I think that's what kind of lit the fire under me of like, I want to just continue to do this. And I think right after that meet, I was telling my dad, like, next year I want to make the real Team USA. And so, and I did. Next year I made that world youth team that went to France. And so it's just, built ever since then. But that was probably the first time that I realized that I could probably do this for the long term.
And then when does UGA come into the picture as a college option for you? Because I know you're a Georgia girl, and so Kennesaw being where you grew up, but where did UGA come into the picture? And it seemed like, okay, this can work out there.
My brother is a year and a half older than I am, and he runs track also. He does the decathlon, and he actually came to Georgia, and I was able to see how Petros developed him in just a year, and and how much he was able to improve. And so I thought to myself, well, if this coach can take my brother to the next level, he can probably do the same with me. And we come from being coached by our dad, so that's when Georgia really started to come into focus. Because I think at first when I was in high school, I'm sure I'm like a lot of people that are like, I'm gonna go far away and explore and go to school in a different state. And that did not happen at all. I did take a lot of unofficial visits all over the place, but I only took 3 of my 5 official visits to UGA, Florida, and LSU. And then eventually Georgia. I mean, the benefits of staying here, not only athletically, but academically also, all of that just really kind of played a role in me deciding to come here. And it was the best decision I think I could have ever made.
Is there a sibling rivalry? Who's faster, you or your brother?
Definitely my brother. And there's actually, we get the question so often, but there's no sibling rivalry. And I think that's because growing up, my dad always told us that we don't win medals by beating each other. So it's just been support and love. And we've been, just standing and cheering in each other's corners this entire track journey.
What was it about public relations that caught your eye for your undergrad degree? You say academics played a big part in your decision-making at that time. What was it about PR?
I don't know. I think, so the undergrad was actually advertising, and the master's is in PR, but I don't know. Well, honestly, if you want the honest answer.
Sure.
It was to avoid math. That was the honest answer. I was like, what can I do that'll allow me to take the least amount of math classes? And that, led me into Grady. And I've always just had like a creative mindset. I've always loved talking to people. And so I think I don't know, I just kind of wiggled my way into the field. And I was kind of taking a chance on it. And I just really loved it. I loved Grady. I loved all of my professors that I had. I loved the coursework. And I was just so pleasantly surprised. I mean, what started with me just trying to run away from math and just kind of using, some of the things that I was skilled with. And then it turned out to be, the best fit. I think it was just incredible.
And yet you and I are in some of the same master's courses now where we're having to do quantitative analysis. And so we've ran from math long enough, and you are a lot faster than I am, but now we're in math together.
Now we're in math together. You can't outrun math forever. I guess that's just how it goes.
So I know the last year and a half has been just ridiculous on everyone, but for an Olympic athlete and competing on that stage and what everything that has been tossed to us from, I guess, 2019 up to now, what has that whirlwind been like for you? Because while everyone else was kind of not traveling, you were still competing, you were still training, and then you were in Tokyo.
Yeah. It's been crazy. I mean, the shutdown of the 2020 season just, I think, threw everyone for a loop. I know I myself just took the rest of that year. I say off. I mean, off as far as like, we backed down the workouts a lot. We worked on a lot of the little muscles and the stuff that we would normally forget if it was like a normal season. So we worked on a lot of core, a lot of ankle stability, a lot of like, shoulder range of motion, things like that. That we knew would play a big part when the 2021 season rolled around. I would be fresh, mentally, physically. And that's how it was. I came into the 2021 season feeling really good. I think at first I was really shaky. I think my first couple of meets were horrible, to say the least. I mean, probably some of the worst performances I've put up in years, in the 2021 season, because I think of that shutdown, having so much time off and out of competition. I think it just took a while for my legs to kind of get back underneath me. But as the season progressed and, I started to get back into form, get into shape, things really started to click. And, some of the meets were still a little weird with like limited attendance. But for the most part, they try to do the best job that they could as far as, getting us overseas and all of that COVID protocol that had to take place, masks, distancing, all of that. Obviously in Tokyo, there were 0 fans. So that was unique, I think, especially for an Olympics. But I do think that Tokyo still did a great job, all things considering, all the rules and regulations. And, I think they still did a phenomenal job with the Olympics. And, the announcer would still call the races as if there was a full stadium of people. So unless you looked up there, in my opinion, you didn't really realize that nobody was in the crowd because there was still noise going on.
That leads into my follow-up question is, with Tokyo being your second Olympics, how did it compare to Rio, which was much more of a traditional Olympics?
Yeah, Rio, honestly, my Olympic experience with both were pretty similar, because in Rio, there was the Zika virus thing. And so they didn't want us, really going around and outside of the village, really. So, and then plus I was really young. So in Rio, I didn't leave the village. And in Tokyo, I didn't leave the village. In Rio, I didn't stay for the closing ceremonies. In Tokyo, I couldn't stay for the closing ceremonies. So my experience with both Olympics are pretty similar. I think the difference was my family was there in Rio. And we got to go and view some of the, what they call houses. So there's like a Team USA house that's off of, outside of the Olympic Village. And so there's food, you can, meet other Team USA families and, just kind of relax and get out of the village for a while. They had like a PNG house where, again, food, families everywhere, just hanging out. So obviously we didn't have those cool experiences in Tokyo. But as far as my experience as an athlete, both times I spent majority of the time in the village. So hopefully if I make it to Paris 2024, I can explore and go to a closing ceremony.
You should just take like the whole 2 months after the Olympics and just explore Europe after it to make up for all of that lost time. That's my advice for you.
Definitely.
So in that Olympic experience, I know one of the things that here in Athens, and then just as you all were doing this, there was so much pride in UGA getting as many medals as it did. When you're there, do you feel that UGA camaraderie? I mean, I know you feel it for USA, but just in particular, the amount of athletes that either train in Athens or come from Athens or are Bulldogs. I mean, it was pretty astounding to see the medal counts if UGA had been its own country.
Yeah, I know. It's always incredible, like how many people from UGA, are out representing like our school, on the world stage. And so tons of swimmers, tons of track and field. And with track, it's really cool because we do have people representing all countries. I mean, Jamaica, Estonia, St. Lucia, like we have people everywhere, Antigua. So it is really cool to walk around the village, and obviously you're not staying in the same building because, Team USA has its own building. Great Britain has its own building, et cetera, et cetera. But, in the common areas like dining hall and just kind of walking around the village, you run into, somebody from UGA. I think I ran into somebody, I had never met her on campus, but she had recognized me and my training partner, Shanice, who represents Team Jamaica. And she said she was a Georgia athlete too. I feel like she played tennis. But it was so cool to, we were just in the dining hall way overseas. And it's cool that, you just have so many Bulldogs, and it makes you feel like you have a sense of home and, and your own personal cheering squad, especially when your family and friends couldn't be over there with you. It's like, okay, well, I have all of my former teammates and all of my UGA family over here with me.
What's your training regimen like now, and why do you remain in Athens to train? I know a lot of people do that, but I'm just curious, what is it about Athens and the infrastructure here that keeps you training here?
I love the facilities. I love just the Athens community. I mean, my church home is here. I love, everybody that's, involved in the athletic association. I've gotten to know them. I still have, people on the team that I've been around for years and years. And so it's just really comfortable. And, it's an hour and a half from my hometown. So I can always just pop home and, hang out with my parents. And so that's why I stay. I'm really comfortable. My training regimen now has been nothing pretty much. I've taken, I guess about 6 weeks off, just completely off. I might run with my dog every now and then, maybe twice a week or something. But I am getting ready to start training next week, actually. So I think this week, starting today, will be a little bit more general prep just to get ready to get going again, and kind of brace for the soreness that I'm going to experience next week. So it's been nothing, but I'm getting ready to start getting off the couch and doing something again.
Which is tougher, the physical training or the mental training?
Ooh, that's a great question. The mental, I think. And the physical is very hard, but I think last year I realized how hard the mental aspect was. And I think it's really interesting that a lot of track and field athletes, and I think a lot of athletes across the board, came out about, speaking about their mental health and, they working with a therapist and, just saying how they've been struggling. And so I myself work with a sports psych every single year. This past year, I actually was working with a new sports psych who was absolutely incredible. But, going back to when I was saying that how the beginning of the season started off really rocky for me, I was worried. Obviously, that lends itself to a lot of stress and anxiety with it being an Olympic year, and I'm performing worse than I've ever performed. How do we get my mindset back on track? How do we get the confidence back? Because I mean, that is what it is. It's the confidence, it's, managing stress, it's managing performances that don't go your way. It's managing, seeing your competition doing really well and, you're progressing a little slower. So it's dealing with all of that. And so I would say that the mental probably is the hardest at this stage, now that I've been doing the heptathlon for so many years. I kind of know what the training is going to feel like, but the mental aspect, I feel like you always got to keep putting tools in your toolbox for that.
And I would think that the emotional strain that you were talking about, that in 2020, you'd gotten to a point you weren't performing well based on, I'm sure, the very high standards that you have. And then, you're in Tokyo and you're competing and you're doing pretty well, doing really, really well. And so I guess going from one to the other, it just seems like a lot for a person.
Yeah. It was nuts. I mean, when I sit here and just reflect on this entire season, this entire journey, this past the 2021 season, and also what happened in 2020, and just to sit here and say, wow, I placed 5th in the Olympic Games. I really don't even know how that happened, just because it was so tough. Getting back on track, staying focused, reminding yourself that you are still the same athlete that you were, because after, having such a good 2019 season, it's that fear of, am I still that same athlete? Do I still have it, kind of thing? And the answer is yes. You are the same person. And So yeah, I mean, it's been a whirlwind, but I'm just so happy with the turnout of the season. Because I mean, 5th at the Olympic Games, like that's the highest. I mean, in Rio, I was 17th. So we've made strides.
Well, I'm glad to hear that your goals are to pursue yet another Olympic Games, because it was just so exciting to see you. And then, we had a few Grady College people involved in the Olympics as well. So it's exciting to follow that track from, the other half of the world. And so to be able to see that again, that's going to be really exciting for all of us. One thing I was curious about in our master's levels classes that we're sharing, we're pursuing research topics and things that we're interested in. Am I safe to assume that some of what you're doing has to do with sports in there?
Actually, no. Surprisingly, no. My topic is actually around environmental advertising and like deception in advertising. So all about greenwashing, basically.
So you're going to pursue athletics at this world caliber level for a few more years. I don't want to put words in your mouth how many years it is, and then it's advertising and pursuing that after that. How do you think you'll know when it's the time to make that switch in your life?
I think after 2024, I'll be ready to transition. I mean, I think in 2024, if I'm able to represent the U.S. at the Olympics again, I think I would be able to look back at my track career, and just be so happy with everything. I mean, 3 Olympics, to have been able to go to UGA and win my 7 individual titles. I mean, just everything has just surpassed any expectations I ever could have had. So I think 2024, ending with that Olympics would just be the dream come true, on top of like an amazing track career. And then after that, I will start the next thing that I'll be really excited about. So I think 2024 will be the definite end. I mean, in my event, it is really hard on the body. So you don't really see a lot of heptathletes going, into their 30s. I mean, some of the other events like the 100, for example, a lot of those guys are able to sprint for a very, very long time. For the multi-eventers, we usually don't last that long, just because, I mean, it's so much pounding on the body for so many years. So usually we tend to retire early 30s, and then transition into our next thing. So I am still young. I'm 26 right now, but by 2024, I think it'll be time. I think I'll be ready to just make the transition. Yeah.
Where's the trophy room? Is it your house or your parents' house?
My parents' house. Literally every time I get a medal or any kind of award, I literally hand it straight over to my family. It doesn't even make it to Athens really ever, unless I forget it in my suitcase. But yeah, it always goes like straight from like around my neck or straight from my hands to my parents' house. They have everything.
When you were in Tokyo, what's the food in Athens that you were craving the most?
There's so much good food in Athens. Cali and Tito's was the first thing that popped in my mind. Love Cali and Tito's, and the tots from South Kitchen and Bar.
Are you planning on pursuing PhD, or is master's level where you end your educational pursuits for now?
Master's level is where I end it for now. I actually have another master's in project management that I did through the Keller Graduate School of Management, which is part of DeVry. The U.S. Olympic Committee has a partnership with DeVry for athletes to pursue higher education. So in between my like undergrad and then when I started this UGA program, I did that project management program. So I have 2 masters and not interested in any like research for a PhD. So I think this will be it for school.
Well, Kendall, you are a superstar, and we are so thankful that you made time for us. We're so glad to have you back in the building, back in another program, and you're such a good representative for what we try to teach at Grady College, which is go get what you want and don't be shy about asking for it. In your case, don't be shy about training for it. So thanks for making time for us here on the Hooper and Sanford podcast, and I will see you in class on Friday.
Yep, it's been fun. Thank you.
Big thanks to Kendall Williams for joining us here on the Hooper and Sanford podcast. I know I'm going to be a big fan of hers, whether it's in the Olympic Games in 2024 in Paris or whatever she does in the advertising space. it sounds like that she has a lot of interest in joining an advertising agency, and she will be very successful in doing that as well. I love her energy, I love her passion, and obviously her drive to be successful at whatever she does. She is such a great example of the wealth of talent and personality and skill and dedication that come through Grady College, and we're thankful for her time. Until next time on the Hooper and Sanford podcast, I'm Dayne Young.